This CPU, motherboard and RAM were available at some point for less than 140 euros, and they performed so well that a lot of people started telling me that this should be the best and only valid choice for budget PC gaming. But is that true? Or is there more to this story? When pursuing the novel act of building a PC you can game on for an appropriately low spec budget, many considerations need to be taken for many components. I spent a surprising amount of time last year exploring the world of low budget CPUs, mostly due to the fact that of all the types of issues you can run into when trying to get a game to work, insufficient CPU power, a CPU bottleneck, can be impossibly hard to deal with, and sometimes difficult to upgrade from. I tend to focus on the new entry-level CPU options, mostly because the used market can be so annoyingly unpredictable outside of developed countries, but there's one topic that has remained constantly mentioned in my comments on my Discord. Xeons. Old Xeons. Old AliExpress Xeons. Welcome to the Low Spec Gamer, brought to you by the Curiosity Stream and Nebula Bundle. Xeon is Intel's brand of server and workstation CPUs. Optimized for potent multi-core usage, these enterprise-level CPUs are very expensive, but the rate at which servers and workstations around the world upgrade their technology means that used Xeons tend to flood the used market pretty regularly. A lot of those end up in AliExpress, and a display of tremendous technological recycling are used by crafty PC builders, as they're still pretty competent multi-core CPUs for extremely cheap prices. The last part missing of the equation is the motherboards, since Xeons often use sockets only present in server equipment that come with server or workstation prices. But the growth of this fascinating microeconomy of Xeon recycling has led to a variety of Chinese brands offering new motherboards with workstation sockets compatible with old Xeon CPUs that can be sold for really cheap prices. Such is the case of Aethermiter, a Chinese brand that is difficult to research since they do not seem to have a website, but has a strong AliExpress presence, and I recently came to borrow 2 of these, with a CPU included on each. These were bought by Spanish YouTuber Nate Gentile, who I am collaborating with more often now that I'm also releasing all my videos in Spanish. He found combos for both of this in AliExpress with CPU and RAM included, for what seemed like an absolutely insane pricing for a 6-core CPU combo, and they're occasionally found a lot cheaper on sale too. So I asked to borrow them because I just had no idea what to expect from these. They are clearly marketed as gaming machines, but what can they actually do? Both motherboards came with an impressive 16GB of RAM included and a 6-core Xeon. Let's start with the smaller and cheaper of the combos, this X79 motherboard. Now, while the motherboard looks tremendously new and it comes with unexpected amenities like an M.2 port for an SSD, after getting it to work there are some considerations that start explaining its low cost. First, while it has a surprising amount of USB ports, none of them are USB 3.0, which is something that we have come to expect even in entry-level motherboards, and something that may run in games from USB drives, just irritating. Second, no cooler is included with either set. This is worth mentioning because that is an extra 20 to 40 euros to spend if you're ready to not have one. Both motherboards that came with a ring, so you can attach a lot of the aftermarket coolers that are very common for this sort of clip, but this is a hidden cost that is usually not mentioned. Third, as far as I know, there aren't any of those cheap AliExpress Xeons with integrated graphics, and I'm probably wrong about this and about to get a million links sent to me, but even so, this is a 2012 CPU, so you're going to need a dedicated GPU. No stopgap solutions here of using integrated graphics until you can afford better. Fourth, this small motherboard came with what appears to be 2 sticks of DDR3 registered RAM, the more expensive variant of RAM often used for servers or other tasks that require critical memory stability. These tend to be a bit more expensive than regular RAM, but since these are also likely being recycled from the same source as the Xeons, they are probably not causing the price to increase. One problem though, try as I might, I just couldn't get the darn thing to post with the 2 sticks of RAM at once in any position. It will only boot with just 1 stick in it, which is annoying. RAM compatibility shenanigans are a common evil in all motherboards, but it is frustrating not being able to use half of the RAM included in the combo. The silver lining is that you do not need to use fancy server RAM, it boots just fine with regular DDR3 RAM. The bad news is that I just could not get it to boot with 2 sticks, even if there were an all gaming set that works great on any other used motherboard I owned. It just does not boot in any combination and I'm not sure why. So I had to run this test on 8 gigs of RAM, which is still fine, pretty fine, but it's not using the full set that you bought. And fifth, since these are meant for bigger setups, these Xeons can run very hot and use a lot of power, so be mindful of the power supply you have. Okay, you bought the cooler, the GPU and a power supply, you can manage it. How does it actually do on games? Now, if you know me well, you will know that rather than telling you how it does on esport titles with likely triple-digit performance, I like to figure out if it can be used to get at least 30 to 60 FPS on some of the heaviest CPU games I know out there, or the heaviest at least in terms of trying to get to 60 FPS. In that group of CPU heavy games that I know, my current favorites for that sort of low-end CPU torture are Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey, Red Dead Redemption 2 and Watch Dogs Legion. This 2012 Xeon gets very close to being able to be a 60 FPS CPU, but ultimately falls short. There's a mixture here between a CPU architecture that is old and might not have the CPU power needed to get there, and likely being forced to use single-channel RAM. It reminds me a lot of the performance you will get with a cheaper, somewhat modern quad-core, like the Ryzen 1200AF, which existing subscribers will remember I kinda liked. And it also reminds me of just how much single-core performance has improved over generations, and it is an interesting comparison to what a new set of components could match, if viable. And talking about existing subscribers, did you know that only 25% of all the viewers are actually subscribed? I was really surprised. If more people subscribed, imagine the things we could do. Let's move to the bigger motherboard then. While a bit more expensive, it is still pretty incredibly priced in the grand scheme of buying a motherboard, CPU and RAM. 2 full PCIe slots and 3 of the small ones, M.2, a mini PCIe for a Wi-Fi card and a display for error codes in case something goes wrong. And yes, USB 3.0. Finally, never thought I would miss that. I tend not to focus too much on motherboard extras, but I wanted to highlight them because, while made for older CPUs, this motherboard has a lot of things that I never get on my cheapo entry-level purchases. Pretty impressive for a motherboard intended for an old CPU. This combo came with a Xeon E5-2620, which on first inspection appears slightly slower than the one we just tested, but don't let appearances deceive you, this is a V3 Xeon. The same Xeon model can often come in different versions, and version 3 is a much newer part with a much newer architecture, a much better per core performance, and a slightly different socket. This one is more expensive for a reason. This one works with DDR4 RAM, and in dual channel mode without any complications, so we have a faster CPU in dual channel with faster RAM, and it shows. Now, it just barely breaks 60 FPS in the hard corners of the punishing Assassin's Creed Origins benchmark, and excels at the CPU-heavy section of the Red Dead Redemption 2 benchmark. These are the places I check when wondering if this will be capable to do 60 FPS on all the heavier games. This is an impressive result and much better than the Ryzen 3 1200AF quad-core that I was using to compare before, and the price relationship is still pretty impressive. I must say, I really like this set. To make a cheap, more general productivity computer, you can't match this value. You might have noticed though that this CPU is not turbo boosting, no matter what is enabled on the BIOS. There's a certain amount of CPU performance that we're not getting. The good news is that with BIOS modifications you can apparently unlock this functionality. To those interested, I'll leave the details in the description. It is a lengthy process, but it can be done. This, however, reinforces the point that part of the cost reduction here comes from the inconvenience of having to tinker a bit more than usual to get the best result. Which takes me to the point about cost in general. To those unfamiliar with AliExpress, it is a website primarily used for buying from Chinese brands shipping from China, as well as refurbished PC parts. Prices and availability are all over the place, so think more like eBay and less like Amazon. And that means that deals for this sort of motherboards are things that you actively have to hunt for, and if you're unlucky, you only get less than good deals or are less enticing when you consider other factors, such as shipping and support. While AliExpress feels universally available, in reality, since these items ship from China, buying here will depend on factors such as: will you be charged import tax when the item enters your country from China? Is your country's mail system robust enough not to lose the packages from China? How much will the shipping cost? How much are you willing to wait for them to arrive? Not to mention, there is such a thing as fake Xeons popping up in displays, so you have to check the pictures to see the spreader and make sure it fits with other images of the same CPU. So there's even an extra layer of care you have to take, all of them leading to the last big issue, upgradability. One of the reasons I tend to focus so much on APUs and mother entry-level parts is to leave a reasonable upgrade path that does not require changing too much stuff. This is a bit more complicated here, considering you're working with an older socket. When it is time to upgrade your CPU, you're either going to have to rely on more AliExpress recycles or have to change your entire motherboard and possibly the RAM too. Now, for a lot of people this is not a problem. I have computers that I upgrade so infrequently that by the time I do an upgrade, I have to change the whole motherboard anyway. Knowing your usual upgrade cycles is very important when determining what is the best option for you. I was really surprised by the result I got during this video, but you have to be willing to deal with the upgrade issues and to tinker and to explore a fair bit. It is even not unusual for experts to try and make a Xeon build only for them to never boot or run into some compatibility issues, like I did.
And as far as we could tell from the motherboard listing, it should have been fine, but should is at the very top of my list of famous last words. While the listing claimed compatibility, despite the best efforts of me, Colin, and Anthony, we could not get this combo to boot.
But if you can get past that and the involved risks, if short-term upgrades are not a thing you care about, and if you can deal with some weirdness in your setup, and also if AliExpress ships to your country without too much issue, and also if you feel crafty about BIOS modding to unlock the full performance, then yes, this is a fantastic option for a cheap PC, if you can hunt down that well-priced combo that is. Just make sure you will not do better with any new parts available in your country. Now this topic is something that has been requested of me a lot, but it is not quite my specialty, so this was a learning process on many fronts. I have many more thoughts on the place these devices occupy in the PC ecosystem, but those are going to be an extra bit on the Nebula version of this video that you will get instead of this section. Nebula is a Streamy Award nominated web streaming platform that a group of creators is building together to host our content ad-free with extended editions, making grand-scale original content that will not work in the YouTube algorithm, like my documentary where I interview RuneScape gold farmers from Venezuela, and even my podcast where I interview their creators about their origin stories. And all of this could be available to you for almost nothing, thanks to one of the best bundles out there. CuriosityStream is a streaming service for high-quality professional documentaries and non-fiction content. I am particularly a fan of documentaries about historical periods, often depicted in games, such as medieval castle sieges. CuriosityStream likes what we're doing so much, we have reached a partnership and we offer a bundle. If you sign up with CuriosityStream using my link in the description down below, you get Nebula for free. This is not a trial, it remains active as long as your CuriosityStream account is active, so you can get the best professional documentaries and the best extended, unique creator content online for just one awesome price. Not to mention how much you will be helping the channel in the process. Thanks to them for sponsoring and you for watching.